All right, I'm Mark Bell. We're out here in Sebastopol, California, and I'm about to go live on Instagram. But before I go live on Instagram, today is day number 45 of what I'm calling Carnivore 100. I started Carnivore 100, I started on January 1st. I made a lot of progress through the month of January in terms of my physique, in terms of my energy levels. I was really happy with just the way everything went from top to bottom with the carnivore diet. For me, it wasn't anything hard to get into. It wasn't tough to get into or anything like that because I've previously been on like a keto style diet for a really long time. And so for those of you that might struggle, or those of you that have tried the carnivore diet and really had a hard time and couldn't get any momentum going, you can still join in with me now because we're going 100 days with it. And I'll probably utilize it on and off the rest of my life, to be honest. And what I'm kind of referring to it as is I'm talking about it a little bit more as a meat-based diet. That way it's not just so polarizing as the carnivore diet. And if I ever eat anything else, then I'm off the team all of a sudden and I can't no longer be, saying that I'm doing a carnivore diet any longer, right? So one of the reasons to call it meat-based is just to give you a little bit of freedom in terms of being able to eat some other things, being able to have some dairy here and there, being able to have even like a keto treat here and there. But for those of you that haven't joined in yet, I'd love for you to join in now. We're not even halfway there yet, so we have a long way to go. Something that happened along the way was I started losing weight pretty aggressively, and I was actually really happy with the weight loss. It felt really good. I was utilizing a lot of intermittent fasting in addition to the carnivore diet. But I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I don't want to just disappear into thin air, and I just didn't want to lose the weight too fast. And so what I did was I kind of rebounded back up, and the way I did that was I just started to eat a lot of food. I started to eat a lot of food, so I got rid of fasting. I have a breakfast every morning. The funny thing is even without trying to fast, you end up with what I like to call it inadvertent fasting. Because even though I'm not intentionally trying to fast, I'm still fasting. Like I had breakfast this morning at like 6 o'clock and I haven't eaten since that point. So I'm not even really trying to fast, but I had sausage and I had a hamburger this morning. That was my breakfast. And I haven't eaten since that time. And now, it's starting to be a little bit later in the day. I forget what time it is. Maybe it's like 2 o'clock sound good? Something like that. So inadvertent fasting is another like almost blessing of the carnivore diet. Getting a little swig of coffee here. Because a lot of times the biggest problem for people on any particular diet is, number one, they have a lot of cravings, and number two, they're just really hungry. I don't feel like I'm hungry on this diet, and that's been amazing for me. When I shifted into eating more and when I shifted into dumping fasting for a period of time, I noticed quickly that it was actually a little bit difficult to eat all the food that I wanted to eat in a given day. That was actually kind of difficult, but it was also really fun. And then what happened right away was I gained 20 pounds. Boom, like a snap of the fingers, I gained 20 pounds. And then all the comments on Instagram, see I'm on Instagram Live over here, all the comments on Instagram, let's see I got a cameraman over there, that's why I'm talking over there. All the comments on IG were people they were like, oh shit, well, of course you gained 20 pounds, you're on gear. Well, I've been on gear since I was 25 years old. So nothing has changed there. That's not the factor that changed. The factor that changed was that I started to eat, and I started to eat a little bit differently. So the fact that I just brought in more food, the fact that I just brought in more energy is the real thing. And then plus, on top of that, not only did I gain 20 pounds, but I gained 20 pounds in a very short period of time. I mean, it's like 10 or 12 days. But I want you to keep in mind that a good 10 of those pounds, it's very deceiving because 225 was my absolute lowest and 245 was my absolute highest. So 10 of those pounds or so are probably just pure like water and stuff like that. I don't know what the other pounds are. I'm not really sure. I feel like I look good. I feel like I look big. I feel like I look pretty full. But you guys might think differently. I'm not sure. All I can tell you for sure though is that I'm not trying to pull any weird tricks on anybody. I'm not trying to ever fool anybody. I'm certainly not ever trying to hurt anybody. All I'm trying to do is be the people's coach and deliver a good, strong, powerful message that can help a lot of you. Okay, so we're on IG Live, so I'd love for you guys to ask a couple questions just pertaining to whatever the hell you want. It could be a training question. It could be about the carnivore diet, really just about anything that you want. So hit me up with a couple questions here. How often should I lift heavy is the first question from DP3970. Why even bother being on Instagram with such a weird name like that?
Boom, roasted.
It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, how often, should you be lifting heavy? That's actually a great question, because I think, in my opinion, from what I see from most people that have trouble gaining strength, is they go too heavy too often. Something else that I see very frequently, though, is like somebody will try their heaviest bench, but they'll only try it like once a week. So I think there's a kind of newer techniques in powerlifting today that really weren't around when I was young, but it's called spreading fatigue. You try to spread the fatigue out throughout the entire week. And so something like a bench press, you might bench press light, medium, heavy. Now, people have had those philosophies before, but I've never seen so many lifters do it as they're doing it today. Juggernaut training system, the hybrid method, all these things are versions of this spreading of fatigue. And what happens is, because you're doing it more often, your body will adapt to it a lot faster. But if you do it too often and you lift too heavy too often, your strength will go down into the toilet. So you have to have a strategic way. So one day might be like, hey, you know what? That's gonna be the upper end. That might be, let's say, reserved for 85 to 90% of your strength, right? Another day could be about 10% lower than that. And another day could be about 10% lower than that other day, right? So we start out with like 85 to 90%. The other day might be, more like, I don't know, 80 to 90% or something like that, or 80 to 85%. And then the other day would be a little bit less than that. And that's the way that you would want to try to do it. And 3 times a week might be drastic if you've never done 3 times a week program before. So you might only want to just bump it up to twice a week. But I've seen that be super effective for people. Another great thing that you can do is just implement the conjugate system. Grab a hold of Jim Wendler's book called 531. In my opinion, it's the best book ever written on strength, and you should check that out. It's just basically the West Side Barbell method, where you do 5 reps one week, 3 reps the next, and 1 rep the next, and you do the same movement for 3 weeks in a row, which is a little bit different than Louis Simmons' version of West Side Barbell, but I think that is really great for beginner and intermediate lifters, and then even just anybody that's never used the program before, it's gonna work really well. Let's get to the next question here. A lot of weird questions that I can't read out loud. What are your thoughts on recommendations for types of workouts on a ketogenic diet? So if you're on a keto diet or a carnivore diet, which basically they're the same thing in my opinion, I think living that low carb lifestyle is the same either way. The style of workouts that you're going to do, I don't think they need to be any different. You could still go at it. Now, if you're in a caloric deficit and you're on any style of diet, then that's when I think that you need to start to figure out some different ways of training. So when you start to really decrease the amount of food that you're eating, I don't count calories, I don't weigh anything, I'm not a fan of it, I'm not an advocate of it, but when you're eating less, right? You start to kind of feel like crap. You ever almost pass out in the gym and have to like grab onto the machine because you think you're gonna go down? I've had to do that many, many times. Sometimes that has to do with your electrolyte balance. You don't have enough salt in your system. And sometimes it's just because you are burning the candle from both ends. You're burning way too much energy and not taking in nearly enough. And so when you're in those situations, that's when you need to have shorter workouts. You might want to work out for about 20 minutes a pop, get in a good, hard, strong workout. It can be strength training or it could be more like bodybuilding. It doesn't really matter. But you go in there and you tear the gym apart for like 20 minutes and you try to do so nearly every single day, or even in some cases, maybe even twice a day if you can afford to do that. But to me, I think that feels really good, especially when you're not eating that much food and especially when you're not eating carbohydrates, because it's so easy to wrap your brain around. You're like, you know what, I'm gonna go in the gym and I'm just gonna tear apart like this one thing or this one body part. And you go in there, you just absolutely annihilate your shoulders or absolutely annihilate your biceps. It's very simple. It's very easy to get your brain wrapped around that after a long day at work. What do we got here next? Dialysis muscle. I like that name. Starting carnivore tomorrow. You should be starting it today. He said he's on dialysis. Do you think there might be any issues? So this one, I will admit, this one is over my head. I don't know anything about somebody being on dialysis, so I cannot really speak about it. I believe dialysis is to keep your liver, I could be wrong, I think it's to keep your liver functioning the way it needs to function. So I apologize, I cannot answer that question. You might want to look into asking, you might want to look for like Sean Baker, or you might want to also look for Dr. Paul Saladino, maybe shoot them a DM and see what they say. I don't know how diet affects being on dialysis in general, so I don't feel comfortable with that one. First cycle I should go on. I love these questions. You know, when it comes to performance enhancing drugs, the first thing people need to be cautious of, number one, is they need to know that they're illegal, right? You need to know that there could possibly be some repercussions to it that you might not be prepared for. So anabolics are illegal, unfortunately. I don't know who made the rule, but they probably shouldn't be illegal, but they are. Secondly, if you're a kid, if you're young, and you live with your parents, then I don't think that's anything. I don't think it's great to bring drugs into your parents' home. I'm a parent myself, and I'd hate for my kids to do that. So wait until you're old enough to make the right decision to be able to do it or not do it. And then the last piece of there is that, once you do them, and then what is what you got to think about. So you need to either have an exit strategy, or you need to be a lifer. I made a decision at 25 years old. I was like, this is my life sentence. I'm going to be on these forever, because for me to get off them now, especially with being in the public eye, that would be really weird. If I all of a sudden out of nowhere lost 20 pounds and just wasn't the same and didn't have the same strength. A lot of stuff can come back. A lot of stuff can kind of regenerate, but I would lose a lot of my gains, and that would just be, I'm just being very honest with everybody. That would just be weird for me, and that would change, I think it would change who I am in some of your eyes, as weird as that might sound. But it really would, and it would take a long time for me to kind of get my way out of that. But what I have done more recently I've done TRT, and all I take now is just testosterone replacement therapy. Due to the fact that I've been on them for so long, it's very difficult for my body to make testosterone the same way that it used to when I was younger, and so now I need the replacement hormones to do it. But anyone's first cycle should be very simple. It should just be testosterone, and if you can go to a doctor, then I would try to go to a doctor, get some blood work done. You don't necessarily have to be old to do that, but you can go to a doctor, and doctors are just very open to it nowadays. It's much different than it used to be. So you can find a doctor that will, kind of be up to date, and they'll know what's going on. Advice on gaining mass on the carnivore diet for powerlifting purposes. So here's the question, why would you want to do the carnivore diet and do powerlifting at the same time? Well, I want to be jacked, I want to be lean, and I want to be strong, all kind of rolled into one, right? I know that's what everyone's mission is. I would say that it would still be wise, unless you're really heavy. Unless you're 200-300 pounds overweight, then I would make the weight loss the priority. Even if you're 50 pounds overweight, or even if you're just uncomfortable with your body fat levels, and you really are like, I'm just tired of this, then I'd make that the number one priority, and I'd work on that. But if powerlifting is still a priority, if what you actually lift is still a priority, I wouldn't necessarily only be on a carnivore diet. I would utilize maybe Stan Efferding's vertical diet, or I would utilize just what I like to call a meat-based diet, which is just meat and throwing in some potatoes and some rice here and there to help give you a little bit of leverage for your lifts, help you to lift a little bit more weight when you hit the gym, help you to recover a little bit more from the gym. I'm definitely not against carbohydrates, even though I wrote a book called The War on Carbs. I'm against carbohydrates for myself, but I think for some of you young guys out there, I think it makes some sense to have some carbohydrates here and there. I like people to be metabolically flexible. So I love for people to be able to run off of fat. I like for people to be able to run off carbohydrates. And one way that you can get there is you can reset yourself by going on a ketogenic or a carnivore style diet for about a month, get rid of a lot of those nasty carbohydrates, and then start to bring them back in. And what you'll notice is they'll actually even be more effective. So you can do the two together. If you want to try to gain weight and be on the carnivore diet and power lift and stuff like that, then you just have to eat a lot. You have to do some things that are going to make your appetite, increase your appetite. Exercise can help increase your appetite. So like being active more than once a day would be wise. Getting proper sleep can help increase your appetite as well. Just to kind of, keep everything in your body, the way that it needs to be. Getting proper rest is highly important. Another thing that can help increase appetite is a little bit of carbohydrate. So sometimes by just having a little extra food or sometimes by having another ingredient mixed in there, it allows you to eat more food. So as much as I'm not a fan of like teriyaki sauce and barbecue sauce and some of these things, if you're trying to be big, you might want to use a little bit of those sauces, not a ton of them, but you might want to use a little bit of those sauces because all it's going to do is allow you to eat more meat, which is the exact goal that we want. And the way that I gained weight on the carnivore diet was simply to increase the amount of eggs that I was eating and increase the amount of steak I was eating. Really is a pain in the ass though to try to eat that much food every day. How should I train to lose weight but not lose muscle? Trying not to lose, by the way, we have an outstanding amount of people on here right now. This is really cool. Got 115 people on here. It sometimes rides around 115 and 100 or so. So that's really good. How do you lose weight? You're asking the greatest question ever. How do we preserve muscle mass? How do we hold on to muscle mass while we're dropping body fat? There's definitely more than one way to do it. For me, it's always been easiest to do it in the absence of carbohydrates. Ketones are anti-catabolic, so they will help preserve muscle. So when you get in a ketogenic state, it will help you to hold on to muscle mass. Now, at first you might lose some weight. At first you might feel kind of flat. And even as you get through your diet and you do the diet for a while, you might start to feel kind of flat. But as I always say, you feel flat on any diet that you do when you do it for long enough period of time. Even when I was doing my bodybuilding diet and there was carbohydrates in there, I would still get very flat because you're just kicking your own ass every single day and it's really, really brutal. But how do we hold on to that muscle mass? Well, we need to make sure that we are increasing protein synthesis. One way to do that is through training. Another way to do that is through eating. Another way that we're going to be able to recover and rejuvenate and get ready for each workout is to sleep. So our workouts are only as good as our recovery. How are we going to recover from a workout? What is going to be the method that we're going to utilize to recover from our workout? And the main thing is just to make sure you're getting proper rest and proper nutrition so you can't miss any meals. So if you want to lose weight and you want to keep the muscle mass on, you can't be missing a lot of meals. Now, we could utilize a strategy called intermittent fasting where you are literally missing meals and you're missing them on purpose. But with intermittent fasting, the intent is that you're going for a pretty long duration. You're going for a fairly long duration before you eat, and you're having a shorter eating window. How is that going to help preserve muscle? Well, a ketogenic diet mimics fasting. But fasting, there's nothing better than fasting than to mimic fasting, correct? So fasting also has anti-catabolic properties to it. Not only that, fasting will also help increase your growth hormone, your IGF-1, your testosterone. These are all things that you can look up and you can check out, and you'll see there's a lot of great research on it. On top of that, when you switch over to eating, your eating window is more anabolic. It kind of increases how anabolic. That's how the warrior diet came to be nearly 30 years ago. You can check out that diet. It's been around forever, where you just eat one meal a day, but you hammer the ever-living crap out of food, which is a pretty amazing diet, pretty amazing strategy. I wouldn't suggest that. necessarily. You don't need to go to that extreme. 2 or 3 meals a day is probably about right. If you try to do 1 or 2 meals every day and you find yourself binging, then it ain't working. If you find yourself utilizing any form of fasting and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days later, you're binging or you're cheating on your diet, it didn't work. Because your body doesn't forget. Your body's like, look, motherfucker, I know what you did to me last weekend. Last weekend you fasted on Saturday and Sunday, and that sucked. And we need payment. And so then you just kind of go hog wild, and you end up eating everything and anything in your house. And so if you can avoid that and you utilize some fasting, then that's fine. But if you can't avoid that, then you have to be very careful with how you fast. I think it's in today's world, it's very common for people to be binging, and no one really talks about it that much. I'm a binge eater. You know, I'll like binge and purge. Like I'll eat so much that I can't move anymore. Like I love food, and I'm kind of like a dog. I don't know when to stop. I just keep eating, and it can be really difficult. And I know a lot of people that really struggle with it. And fortunately for myself, I never really had a real issue with it. But whether you're trying to gain muscle or whether you're trying to lose fat or whether you're trying to do both of those things at the same time, or you're trying to get stronger, you're trying to get shredded up for the summer or whatever it might be, all these things, they just take a lot of control. They take a lot of discipline. The only way to have any sort of discipline is to have things that are repeatable. You need to have things that you can do day in and day out. And so, like, what's reasonable for you to do? If we start adding in way too many things, then we don't have a program, because a program needs to be routine. A routine is something that you actually follow. A routine is something that you do every day. And you need to do these things day in and day out. They need to be done very often. So it can be very difficult because you're like, I don't know what's repeatable for me. Well, if you don't know what's repeatable for you at the moment, then you might want to just start out with an easier diet. You know, stick to natural foods. You got meat, you got veggies, you got fruit, and then maybe you have a little bit of side stuff here and there. You got some potatoes and some rice and stuff, but the majority of your food is leaner meats. And you want something sweet, eat some fruit. You want something delicious and a little bit like off plan, eat some peanut butter. You know, like keep it simple, but try to keep it to natural whole foods. And then over a period of time, you can start to work some of those things out. But I mean, if I'm being honest, if you were to eat that way your entire life, if you were to eat natural foods and just didn't get into a position where you ate a lot of processed foods, you would never even really need a diet. And you certainly wouldn't need an app. You wouldn't need a coach to tell you how to lose weight. You wouldn't need to be weighing your food or measuring your food or any of these things. They would all be very irrelevant. There'd be a lot of people out of work, and you wouldn't even have to listen to me talk right here, because we wouldn't need help dropping weight, because there wouldn't be any weight to lose, because we'd already be in really good shape. You can eat as much meat, and you can eat as much vegetables, and you can eat as much fruit as you want. I know even with like fruit, people are like, there's fructose in there, but it's really not going to make any difference. Like, try to eat as much of it as you want for a few days, and then you'll see, like, when you're into day 3, you're like, screw this, man, I can't eat anymore, I'm going to explode. So it doesn't matter how you try to eat all that stuff. There's no way to like really get fat off of it. It's going to be our last question. Let's see, I'll maybe take one more after this, because it's a lifting question. But this guy was just asking a question about a sumo deadlift. He has a lot of knee pain during a sumo deadlift. You know, first of all, you got to always make sure that you do some sort of warm up. You got to do some sort of warming up, especially for these movements like a bench squat or deadlift, where there's bigger and smaller joints moving around. I would say warm up your hips. Make sure you utilize something like the hip circle. You can get it off of MBSlingshot.com. Walk forward with it a couple times, walk backwards with it a couple times, walk sideways with it a couple times. Get your body warmed up, get your body ready to go. I would even say, since your knee is kind of tweaked and not feeling great, I'd even do some very light knee extensions. Just, you know, get on a leg extension machine and do some really light leg extensions, or maybe even just do some very light squats. But a lot of times the knee will hurt because of like the way your foot is positioned. If your foot is like angled way out, like this, a lot of times there'll be a lot of weird stress on your knee that your knee's just not accustomed to. So pay attention to your foot placement, pay attention to where your feet are. And there's also an exercise you can look up called the TKE, terminal knee extension. You can look that up on YouTube. You can check it out. You'll see all different kinds of people demonstrating a TKE. Do a bunch of TKEs before you start your deadlift training for the day. You also might want to try to move your stance in a little bit. Play around with that, but really play around with the feet. Make sure you're hitting up your warm-ups. Okay, the next question here is, this one's about water. That's kind of boring. How much water should you drink? Just drink a lot of it. And you should be like, when you pee, you shouldn't be peeing like bright yellow, and you shouldn't be peeing clear either. If you're peeing clear, it means that you're diluting yourself probably a little too much. And if you're peeing like really bright yellow, then that's a sign that you're probably very dehydrated. I think actually, on that topic for a second, I do think that most people in today's day and age, like most fitness people, I should say, drink too much water, because we've been programmed to drink water, and everyone goes around everywhere with a water bottle all the time. You'll never see Mark Bell with I never have a water bottle, and I never have prepped food with me. Those are two things that I don't really care to ever bring around with me. And I don't, the prepped food thing, that's probably a whole nother video, but like, when I'm hungry, I just cook and I eat usually, or I'll go to a restaurant and eat. I don't feel like I need to walk around, lug around 6 meals with me at all times. Exercises for a stronger grip on deadlifts. Probably the easiest thing when it comes to a deadlift, there's nothing easy about a deadlift, but probably the easiest thing when it comes to deadlifting and building up the grip for the deadlift is to just do a lot of holds. Hold on to those weights at the top. Do a lot of your training with a double overhand grip without a pinch grip, without a hook grip rather. Squeeze the crap out of the bar, and your normal warm-ups, take less of a jump in your warm-ups. Like for us at SuperTraining, the most I ever did 455, I think, for like a triple double overhand grip. That's not very impressive. There's guys that were doing 5 plates and stuff like that, but that was the best for me. And what we did was, I would do 135 for maybe a set of like 10. I'd do 225 for maybe like a set of 10. I'd do 315 for maybe like a set of 5. But as soon as I got to 315, I'd actually put on less weight rather than just going right to another plate. I might put on like a 10 and a 5. I might put on a quarter. I might put on 405, and then I might put on like 425, 435, and then finally that 455. So make smaller jumps, do a lot of double overhand training without the hook grip, and really blast the crap out of your grip. Then once you get into your training for the day, you can go back to using the hook grip, or you can go back to using your mixed grip. Whatever grip you're using is fine. Once you do that, then you're going to do your normal working sets, but hold all of your sets, hold all of your last rep in each set, hold the last rep at the top for a good 5 or 6 count, and really squeeze that bar. And really think about it. Like, think about the last time you missed a deadlift, and really think about it and be like vengeful about it. Like, be like pissed. Be like, this ain't happening to me again. I'm holding on to that thing. Another strategy you can do is pull-ups. Pull-ups this way, pull-ups this way, and pull-ups this way. Get those different hand angles in there. And also some mixed grip pull-ups. If you really struggle with a pull-up, just use a band, which can give you a little bit of assistance. That would be recommended, so that way you get a little pop out of the bottom and you don't have to lug up your entire body weight. And even just hanging from a pull-up bar would be really good. Hanging from a pull-up bar, doing like leg raises or something like that would be great. Leg raises are going to help build up your stomach, and that can also help build up your deadlift, help build up your squat. So doing some leg raises while you're holding on to a chin-up bar would be great, but in the meanwhile, you're working your grip quite a bit. Using things like fat grips and stuff like that is another way to kind of sneak in some grip training. Anytime that you do any bicep work, you can try to train with a fatter grip. You can do a lot of reverse curls and hammer curls and those kinds of things. Any sort of high rep rows, any sort of high rep shrugs, it's going to blast the crap out of your grip. I'm going to see if I can take one more question that's related more to nutrition here. And on that note, It's kind of a two-parter. How many 10-minute walks do you take every day? I try to do 3 every day. Sometimes I only end up with 2, but I try to do 3 every single day. What do you think about multivitamins? That's really an interesting one, you know, because I think a lot of people take multivitamins. I would say probably every person in America probably has multivitamins in their cabinet, and a lot of people don't even really take them, right? I would have to say that I'm not sure. It's probably up in the air. It's probably 50-50 on whether they're doing more harm than good. I don't really think they have much of a use. I do think that maybe under certain circumstances, people that exercise might need a little bit more vitamins and minerals than the next person. But you know, you see it in your urine, right? When you take a multivitamin, like 5 seconds later, when you pee out this like crazy neon yellow color. And so I don't think that that's very healthy, and I don't think that that's really probably doing anything. One thing I would suggest, if you have the ability to do this, is to get some blood work done. So you get blood work done, and you can kind of see like where are your electrolytes at? Where's your sodium? Where's your magnesium? You know, what's everything looking like inside your body? And when you can see that, then you might be able to implement. You might need to say, I have a pretty sound diet. I have pretty good nutrition right now. Maybe I should just try to, you know, bring in some supplements, you know, after you had that blood work done. But otherwise, I think that if you're on a carnivore style diet, I don't really think that you need any vitamins or minerals for that matter. And it seems like the longer that you're on the diet, the more true that becomes. So maybe in the beginning, maybe some people would need some assistance. I know salt is a big one. Needing sodium is a big one for sure. And sometimes people might need even a little bit of potassium. You need some of those electrolytes in there. Some people will supplement capsules or powders or some different things like that, but I don't think you need it. You just eat properly, you don't have to worry about it. That's all the time we got. Thank you guys so much for following along on here. Thank you so much for following along on there. In the comments below, let me know what you guys think about some of the comments that you heard here today, and also some of the answers. And then also, if you got your own comments, you got your own questions that you want to ask, you can ask them here. Make sure you don't miss these. You know, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're turning on your notifications on Instagram over here, and make sure you're subscribed to Mark Smelly Bell's YouTube channel, and that way you get a notification every time we pump out a video, so you're not missing any of these. That's all the time we got. Strength is never weakness, weakness is never strength. Catch y'all later.